Good morning. Great to be back in Brevard County. Oh, sit down. We got a great announcement today. Not the last time I was here, but within the last few years, we were here. I think it was probably 2022, and we had my kids, and this was when, on the heels of Maverick, Top Gun Maverick coming out. So my son was like 4 at the time, and I think he sat in the cockpit in every one of these and pretended to be Maverick. So it's great, and we really appreciate the hospitality here. We're also pleased to be joined by our Lieutenant Governor, Jeanette Nunez, our Florida Department of Transportation Secretary, Jared Perdue. Of course, we have Kevin Doherty, Director of Airports for Titusville Cocoa Airport Authority. And then we have Senator Mayfield and Representatives Sheroy, Brackett, and Tremont. So thank you guys for all your great work and making sure that Florida is leading the nation on so many different things. And if you look at what we've been able to do just in this most recent legislative session with the budget and where Florida is, we now are rated 2 years in a row #1 economy of all 50 states by CNBC. Trust me, CNBC does not want to rate us #1. It's just the way it goes. We're ranked 2 years in a row, U.S. News #1 in education, #1 in higher education for the last 6 years. And our state universities, as Florida residents, tuition averages about $6,300 a year. It's hard to beat that anywhere in the United States, especially for the quality that you're getting. Our credit rating is as good as it can be, better than the federal government, better than a lot of other states. We have, since I became governor, if you take all the debt that has been accumulated in the history of the state of Florida from the 1840s to the present, we've retired 36% of that just in the last 5.5 years. And we're going to do more. We're going to do more going forward. We have, the legislature and I have worked together, we have actually an accelerated debt repayment program that we put in the budget, so we're able to knock out the debt at cheaper prices when appropriate and drive that down even more. And so all that has led to Florida, of all 50 states, we have the lowest per capita state debt of all 50 states in the United States. And so that's really how you manage things. That's how you do business. And, you know, it's not just, you know, we're not necessarily just, you know, being penny pinchers and like something like green eye shade stuff. We are managing it well, but we're reducing taxes. We did $2.5 billion last year. We've done $1.5 billion this year. We did the 50% reduction in tolls, which some people in Central Florida, even when you're out here, you're going to get hit with those, particularly as you get closer to Orlando. And so that's a 50% reduction for commuters every month that they get. We've cut taxes for disaster preparedness, so you can get those supplies for our next holiday. We do 2 of them. It's back to school. All these, no tax permanently, no tax on any baby item in Florida. So we want people to be able to raise kids as affordable as possible. So we've done all those things. But we've also invested a record amount in K-12 education, both in terms of having school choice program, which is the largest in the country, but also raising teacher salaries by billions of dollars, which has never been done in this state's history until we did it. Now we have the highest per pupil spending. Not that the spending equals, because obviously there's places that spend a lot and do terribly, but it just shows the commitment has been there to do what matters. And then you look at what we have. Oh, in higher ed, you have the low tuition. We've not allowed any tuition increases for our state universities since I've been governor, and we're not going to have any as long as I'm governor because we want it to be affordable for people. But, you know, good students in Florida, they qualify for Bright Future scholarships, which we fully funded. So that's 100% tuition. And for others, a notch below on the Bright Future, you get 75% tuition off. So our top students in Florida, they pay basically nothing to go to college at one of our state universities. That's a huge, huge deal. And, you know, the interesting thing is, because we've held the line on tuition, it just does not get a lot of publicity. It should get a lot. We have Florida prepaid college program, right? Is anyone here involved in Florida prepaid? We've got a few, okay? You know. So it was a great idea, you know, you can kind of do, and then it guarantees your kid to be able to go to state university. So, but what's happened is the prepaid had been collecting for many years contributions or required payments, assuming that tuition would just keep going up. And that hasn't happened. So then they look, and credit to the board for doing this, so they have all this extra money, and so what do? They send rebates back to the parents because they say you've already done enough. The tuition is where it is, so we can't keep charging you. How many other states would do that? They would pocket that money and they would waste it on something else. So you're talking about billions of dollars that's been sent back just in Florida prepaid, which is really, really good. So that's education. Then you have environment and natural resources. We have done more in our tenure in terms of Everglades restoration, in terms of improving water quality, what we're doing with the Indian River Lagoon. Nobody's done. It's historic. We also have done things to help beach renourishment, all these different things. And we have this massive increase in conservation land. We got this massive Florida wildlife corridor that we've created in the center part of our state, which was never done before. So we've done all of that. It's cost, we've had to put money in, record amounts of money in for it, but it's something that was the right thing to do. So we did that. And on transportation and infrastructure, we had the biggest transportation budget this year than we've ever had by far, but we also did an initiative called Moving Florida Forward. I do not ask people to move to Florida. I mean, honestly, it's like, but it's a free country. And if you're living in Minnesota under Waltz, some people are going to want to leave that. That's just the reality. I mean, we know that. And people that have lived in some of the places in the Northeast and even the West Coast, there's been problems, right? And so I think people have been driven off, and Florida's been the place where I think they've looked to for Sandy, but and so I'm not asking for that. I think the state will do well regardless of the migration patterns, but nevertheless, it's happening. And a lot of businesses moved here too, by the way, and investment. But there's challenges with that and the infrastructure. So yes, we have a good budget. Yes, we have efficient transportation agency as these things go, but that wasn't going to be enough. So we did the Moving Florida Forward program, where you're looking at $5 to $7 billion extra money to accelerate programs. So some of these road projects where there's congestion, they were in the hopper to be done, but they weren't going to start till next decade. Now we're starting them now, and we'll finish them by next decade. And so that's going to save 5, 7, 10, 15 years off the projects, depending on how many states are accelerating these things. I mean, usually it takes a long time. So we really work hard, to push and to get things ahead of schedule. And I think, they're doing more on I-4, as you get to Disney and you start heading to Tampa, it could be that. So they're doing the big expansion there, but in the meantime, they're going to open up another lane by the end of this year. You're going to open up another lane. So there's always ways to innovate. So the fiscal situation in Florida, it's not like we've just been penny pinching. I mean, we're obviously very conservative about it, but we are really making serious investments in the things that I think Floridians care about education, about the roads and transportation, and of course about conserving and protecting natural resources. So this is something that's really, really good. And so you have all of that, and yet here we are with this great story about reducing debt. I think we have the second lowest per capita state tax burden in the country. I don't know who's lower. I mean, obviously we don't have an income tax, so maybe we'll be able to get to number one. I got to figure out what taxes we need to cut. When you don't have an income tax, it's actually harder to cut taxes. It'd be a lot easier, and the property is a local thing in Florida, so we don't really control that at the federal or at the state level. So we kind of got, you got sales tax and you got all these assorted things, but no income tax. So we'll keep it that way. So all this stuff, is good. So then I say, okay, well, what's the issues that we deal with? And the challenges we deal with in the state are almost all a byproduct of the federal government's policies. Interest rates have gone up because of the borrowing, printing, and spending money. Inflation and the price increases at the grocery store and everything in between has gone up because of them borrowing, printing, and spending trillions and trillions of dollars. And so that's really if they just ran things the way Florida did, you wouldn't have inflation. You wouldn't have a lot of these problems. And so these are government-created problems that we're having to navigate. And so, I just look to see, okay, we're in this campaign season. you literally have, and I mean the media is really doing this, so you have somebody that is currently vice president that was not only there when all this stuff happened, she was the tie-breaking vote for the big stimulus in the spring of 2021. She was the tie-breaking vote for the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, which did not reduce inflation. It was more of a money grab for some of their climate ideology stuff. So you have that, and to me that's bad enough. But that's being portrayed as somehow she is the change agent, that she's offering this fresh start and everything. And I'm thinking to myself, if your house was on fire, would you bring in the arsonist to put out the fire, or would you actually try something different? But what she's proposing is, so she was instrumental in creating these, because people are pinched at the grocery store. They're pinched with the interest rates, and you see that. And so her solution is, yes, she was an integral part in creating the problem, but then somehow she's going to apply policies that are going to fix the problem she already started. And think about the policies that are being put out. If they tell you that the groceries have gone up because of price gouging, they are lying to you. That is just not, price gouging can happen, but in the grocery store, if someone started charging, 25, 30% more for orange juice, other companies then would offer the market price and they'd get your business. It's a competitive environment. The reason why the prices have gone up is because all the federal government's policies interrupted supply chains, pumped too much money into the economy, devalued all these things have led to this. And so to say you're going to impose basically price controls on that will not work. Look, if you could control prices from the government, I would just say charge everyone 5 cents for eggs, right? Why not? If that's how it could be done, we would just do that. We know that doesn't work. We know when that's been tried, it's been an utter failure. So this price control, that is a ruse just to try to mask the fact that the underlying problems that people are having to deal with were government created, and particularly Biden-Harris created. But then she has this idea, so you have that. And then she's doing the unrealized capital gains. This is insane. And so, you buy stocks, let's say, and, you have them. And maybe the market does good and your stock goes up. You still haven't sold the stock. You don't owe any tax on that. You sell the stock, you owe a capital gains tax eventually, and if you sell it short term, then they treat it as ordinary income. But you don't owe a tax just because the value went up. What she's proposing to do is to tax unrealized gains. So if the stocks go up, whatever the increase is, you'd have to pay 25% of that increase without selling the stuff. And that's true for a home, that's true for investments, all stuff. Now the media will say, oh, she only wants to do this for very wealthy people. Well, that's what they said when they introduced the income tax in 1914. They said this is only going to hit Carnegie and Rockefeller and all that. And now, is there any middle income tax worker who doesn't pay income tax? Yeah, no, you pay. People at the very low end of the income don't typically get hit by income tax, but most people do, who are out there and working in the prime. So once you introduce a concept like taxing unrealized gains, that has the chance to really deep six the economy, because people just aren't going to invest. Why would you invest if before you even sold you had to just pay tax on a running basis? And guess what? If you buy stocks and they go down, I don't think the federal government's going to cut you a rebate on the unrealized loss, right? So it's heads they win, tails you lose, basically, with this. So this is economically illiterate. This is something that would absolutely devastate investment. I don't buy the idea that somehow this would only be applied to very wealthy people, because the principle's the principle. You're saying as people increase wealth through investment activity, and that's not just buying stocks. The number one investment that's performed best, arguably, for Floridians over the last 5.5 years, the value of their home. People that had a home in 2019 compared to now, your property, I don't know if there's anybody's who's worth less than it was then, and many is worth a lot more. not just 10, 15%. People's homes are worth 50, 75, 100% more than they were just a few short years ago. What they would be saying is, if you say it's okay to tax unrealized gains as your home value goes up, the increase in the home price. So if your neighbor's house sells for, an extra $100,000 from what you thought, then they would say, oh, your house has gone up by 100, you got to pay $25,000. It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts, and it's financially illiterate, and it would do a lot of damage to this country. So I hope people get the message on this. And again, don't buy that somehow you can introduce a concept like this and it's only going to apply to people that are making, millions and millions of dollars. I don't buy that at all. I think everyone should be really worried, because what it basically does is it makes you functionally a ward of the state. The state would have first dibs on pretty much everything that you're doing, including just buying it, investing in things and letting it sit. You wouldn't be able to just let it sit without the federal government getting involved in your business. And I think that that's a huge, huge mistake. So hopefully we'll be able to get right on the federal policies so that we can continue doing and showing how it's done in Florida. Now, why we're here today. We have a lot of different ways that we can make an impact, and government's role, look, we don't create the jobs directly. I think you create an environment that's positive. We have no income tax. We have reasonable regulatory environment. We have good transportation. We do things, I think, that are meaningful. But ultimately, it's the private sector that is creating this. If you want government jobs, that's just not going to be the way to get it done in the long term. Again, if it was that easy, then government could just hire everyone would be rich. But we know that doesn't work. So we have to find opportunities as a state to continue to create a good environment, and then where appropriate, bolster specific types of job training so that the workers that are necessary are there, or specific types of infrastructure so that we can help bring good private investment projects to fruition. And that's why we're here today, because where we are in the Space Coast of Florida, think where we were 15 years ago on the Space Coast and to where we are now. It's been a remarkable turnaround. I remember when they retired the space shuttle. You had a really good run where space was something that was significant. They retired the space shuttle. I remember the head of NASA at the time said that the primary responsibility of NASA was to, make the Muslim world feel better about their contributions to science. And I'm thinking, I don't think that's why NASA was created. I think it was created to be able to explore and to be able to push new boundaries. So now we're in a situation where we're in this great commercial space investment boom, and I think we have a lot more runway to be able to do on that. And again, this is not the state. This isn't even, in many respects, the federal government, though the federal government clearly is playing a role. But our role, I think, is to say, what infrastructure do we need, particularly in this area, to be able to continue to make this part of Florida the #1 place for space anywhere in the entire world. I've talked to all these people who are involved in all these companies. There's no better place to launch than right here in Brevard County, anywhere in the United States. And it's historic, and we want to keep it that way. So we're here at Space Coast Regional Airport, and we have the Innovation Park that is a 3-phase development project that is slated to house at least 5 buildings and create 1.4 million square feet of new industrial building space. It's interesting. I was talking to some of these guys who are involved in the launches, and they're like, we want to make everything in Florida and then just launch it right there. You don't want to be bringing stuff from around the country. So there's a lot of industrial possibilities here, but you want to be able to link the airport to the industrial park. So that was the request from us to say, can you take some of your job growth grant fund money and provide that here for Space Coast Regional Airport? And we looked at the project and we said, yeah, we're going to do that, because I think it lays the foundation where you're going to be able to see even more job creation. I think you'll see a positive fiscal impact. So I am pleased to be able to be here today to announce that we are, from the state of Florida, officially awarding $5.8 million from the Job Growth Grant Fund to Space Coast Regional Airport to build the roadways necessary to connect to the industrial park. So I think that we've been bullish on this area for a long time, given what's going on. I think the state of Florida has been a really good partner with the commercial space industry and where we can make an impact. And we've done other stuff in Brevard on infrastructure that plays into this throughout my time as governor. But this is something that I think it will produce jobs, it will produce positive revenue for both the local community and for the state of Florida. So I'm really excited to be able to do this. And I think we have the check somewhere. Where is it? All right. So you guys, from whoever wants to accept this from the airport, you guys can kind of come up here. All right, yeah, let's do it. All right, here we go. All right. All right, say cheese. Good job, congratulations. All right, we're going to hear from our Lieutenant Governor.
Well, good morning, and thank you, Governor. What a great announcement for this region, and I'm honored to be here along with so many of our elected officials and, of course, our Secretary of Transportation, Jared Perdue, and Kevin Doherty, who you all know and love. And they also serve on the Space Florida board with me, so thank you for being here. And as the governor mentioned, more than 5 years ago when we got elected, he was singularly focused on ensuring that this industry and this area would continue to thrive. And at that time, he asked me to chair the board of Space Florida. I told him as long as I didn't have to get on a rocket and go to space, that I was happy to do so. But what we've seen with this administration, with this governor, is really just an incredible growth in this area. We have become the fastest growing region. Of course, we've always been known for our launches, but really beyond the launches, we've tried to create an environment that's going to foster growth in so many areas that are related to aviation and aerospace. Just this morning, along with our CEO and President of Space Florida, Rob Long, and Senator, Representative, Commissioner, what is it that I call you now? I know you're a commissioner soon to be. Thad Altman, we were able to tour Amazon, their satellite processing facility at Project Kuiper. It's something that they've invested over $120 million here in Florida. And we're really excited about the growth to the region. We're really excited they're bringing more jobs and more investment. And so we're really proud of what we've been able to accomplish from an economic perspective. Since 2007, Space Florida has attributed to over $5.9 billion worth of economic impact. And just this year, we have said that we are going to be generating over $1.1 billion annually for Florida's economy. So great growth in that area. And we actually currently have over 160 projects in the business development pipeline. The team at Space Florida is doing their due diligence, but those projects represent a potential value of over $4 billion to the state of Florida. And so there's a reason why so many companies are coming to Florida, looking to expand their businesses, looking to open up here. Partly, of course, because of our great governor and his leadership, but also because of our unrivaled location, our unbeatable financial tools, and so many things that we're able to provide to ensure that these companies can grow and thrive here. And that's what you'll hear from the companies themselves, but what you'll also hear is about the significant investments in infrastructure led by our Secretary Perdue, making sure that we provide the opportunity for infrastructure investments through our Spaceport Improvement Program, and obviously recognizing that Florida is an aerospace ecosystem. So the $5.8 million that the governor just awarded is something that we're really proud of. We're excited to see the construction of this roadway that's going to connect the Space Coast Innovation Park to the Space Coast Regional Airport and bring additional jobs to the region. So as we look to the future and we look for more and more aerospace companies deciding to move here, our project pipeline continues to grow, launches continue to take off from the Space Coast, and we continue to be heralded across the globe as the launch capital of the world. We want to make sure that both those businesses that are coming, tourists that are coming to see launches, that they know that Florida is serious about space. So thank you all so much, and thank you, Governor, for making sure that this continues to be a priority.
Thanks, Jared.
Good morning, and thank you, Governor DeSantis, for your continued leadership and investments in transportation infrastructure. I personally am proud to live in the free state of Florida, where we continue to grow at a rapid pace, and the governor continues to prioritize transportation infrastructure, and very grateful for that. Really proud to be implementing the governor's toll relief program at a time when just grocery bills alone are really putting the pinch on families. It's really nice that commuters who use our toll facilities day in and day out now have that toll relief program because of the governor's leadership. Also, you heard the governor talk about the Moving Florida Forward initiative. How many of you have driven I-4 in Orlando in the attractions area? Just as a highlight, that project has been in development and planning for 20 years. And we've been wondering, when are we ever going to be able to fund this $4+ billion improvement? Because of Governor DeSantis' leadership, we are bringing that project to you sooner than ever. So we're very excited about that. And we're going to bring an accelerated project that's going to open new lanes and relieve congestion immediately while we build the much bigger, more complex project. So we're really excited about that. Because of the governor's leadership and also the continued investments of the legislature, really Florida has been postured as a global leader in transportation. We're really proud of that. We have 15 deepwater seaports, 20 public use airports, 4 large hub airports. We're the only state in the nation that has 4 large hub airports, 2,800 miles of freight and passenger rail lines, and 8 active launch sites, which since 2019, we've had tremendous growth. I think back in 2019 we had around 20 launches, and today we're on pace potentially to have 100 launches this year. So incredible growth. So today's announcement is a great example of how Governor DeSantis continues to invest in infrastructure that improves your quality of life day in and day out and helps our economy grow. And this $5.8 million for the regional airport here and the industrial growth is really going to be a tremendous help to them. And Kevin Daugherty's an amazing partner. We're really excited to see that come to fruition. Just to highlight a number, since 2019, our work program has invested $1.8 billion towards capital improvement projects at Florida's airports. We've prioritized these investments as the aviation industry in Florida continues to grow, which has resulted in nearly 400,000 jobs and a direct economic impact of approximately $77.2 billion. With so many innovations and successes in aviation aerospace, it was a great honor to join Lieutenant Governor Nunez, Florida Commerce Secretary Kelly, and Colonel Long from Space Florida in England for the Farnborough Air Show, where we had many businesses there and really showcased and highlighted the aerospace growth here in Florida as our industry continues to grow. A robust and successful transportation network is imperative to Florida's success, and it's really important that we embrace every mode, including space, airports, and seaports, and it's important that they all work together as we plan the future of our infrastructure. So again, thank you, Governor, for this important investment and for your leadership.
Good morning. My name is Kevin Daugherty. I have the pleasure of serving as the director of the Titusville Cocoa Airport Authority. On behalf of the authority, we'd like to thank Governor DeSantis and Lieutenant Governor Nunez for their continued support and leadership of the Space Coast Regional Airport and Exploration Spaceport. By way of background, in 2022, the authority entered into a long-term ground lease agreement with Space Coast Innovation Park, a private developer who's here today, for the 450 acres of unimproved property on the west side of our airport. As part of their phased and planned development, Space Coast Innovation Park will be constructing 5 to 7 buildings, state-of-the-art industrial Class A facilities for new aerospace companies right here in North Brevard. With the financial assistance provided from the Governor's Job Growth Grant, the authority, as the Governor indicated, will be constructing the roadway and drainage improvements as part of the project. We'd also like to thank North Brevard Economic Development Zone, who provided funding for the design and permitting of the project. We couldn't have done it without them also. And this has been an amazing public-private partnership between the state of Florida, the zone, the Airport Authority, Space Coast Innovation Park, and along with their capital partner, Hines. So thank you very much. Thank you, Governor. Thank you for everything you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I want to wish, we've got a Little League team from Central Florida, Lake Mary, in the Little League World Series right now, and they play today. They've had a really good run, so we wish them the best on that, and we'd love to see them make it to the championship, and we're proud of that. And then we also now have this weekend the start of college football season. Can you imagine? It's already back, and as part of that, we have our first team in Florida that's playing is Florida State. They're playing Georgia Tech to start the season, which is not necessarily unusual, but they're doing it in Dublin, Ireland. And so I'm going to be going over there, and we're going to be doing some business development. We're meeting with a bunch of Irish companies, going to continue to try to expand some of our economic relationships across the pond. But I will say, and I'm all for the aerospace and do it, but if you happen to have a little bit more space at this industrial park, if I could get them to put a Guinness factory in Florida, I mean, that would be really tough to pass up. So I'm gonna get to work on that. Okay, do we have any questions? Yes. Do you want to talk about the terminal? I mean, look, I think first of all, no one's done more for the cruise industry in this country than me, because they shut them down during COVID. I sued to open up the cruises. People forget about that. They said, "Oh, we're going to shut down cruises for 2 weeks," and then 9 months later, it's still closed. And then Biden comes in, and I sued him. And even the cruise lines weren't willing to join the lawsuit because they were too scared of the federal government. You literally had the CDC, through the stroke of a pen, shut down an entire industry. And I'm just thinking to myself, we had people who work in that industry. We were down, I think it was like Miami, we had them all there, and they were talking about obviously loss of income and all that, but just not being with their friends and coworkers, all this stuff. So it was like huge problems. So we did that and got them open. We won that decision because the CDC does not have authority to close down American industry, and we should never allow that to happen in this country. And so we're proud of that. We're proud of being a great spot for the cruise. Now, we had certain pathways that we were doing on infrastructure that we thought were good. There was clearly a change, and now we're kind of right-sized on that. So, Jared?
Yeah, thank you, Governor. Thank you for the question. So, seaports are an integral part of our transportation network here, really important for our supply chain. And as you heard the Governor, the cruise industry is absolutely paramount in the continued growth of our economy. It's been very successful here, and nobody has supported them like Governor DeSantis and the state of Florida. It's important that our seaports with public infrastructure stay diversified and embrace, all of the different modes that are coming through there. We have cargo, we have fuel, we have Port Canaveral is very unique. It has space right there in its very own region, and we just want to see all of those work together seamlessly. Specifically with North Cargo Berth 8, we made a $13 million investment in that berth for breakbulk cargo, and we're very pleased that Port Canaveral has been responsive to our letter. We appreciate the leadership of Chairman Lloyd and the Commission in being responsive to that. We just want to see that berth continue to be used for what the investment was intended for. And, the port's going to be at the table with a partnership, and we're going to partner on how to continue to grow, all of the business at Port Canaveral, along with all of our other seaports. And it's really important to understand that we need every seaport in the state of Florida to be diversified so that we can have a resilient supply chain even when the rest of the country and globe are struggling with supply chain issues. So thank you.
Yep. Yeah, and we've had some of the major companies say that this is important for them to keep. So I think we could do that. And then I think, still have pathways to be able to help the cruise industry as well. I think our candidate Brevard won the plurality but didn't win the majority. I think that's probably going to be good. Now, I will confess, in 22 we had a whole operation dedicated to this, and we did a lot of resources, and we had all that. I wasn't in a position to do that this time, at least for the primary. Maybe we'll help in the general, because I've got all these other things I've got to do. I'm raising money for the super PAC helping Trump against Harris. I've got stuff where we're doing with the legislature. I've got these amendments that they're doing. So we're doing a lot of different things, and so 22 was great to do that. But what we need to be able to do is to where we can have candidates who stand for putting students first, protecting the rights of parents, and education, not indoctrination. Have those candidates be able to get support for their campaigns, particularly financially, because I think the school unions, they put in a lot of money, right? And they did a lot in this one. 2022, we were able to overwhelm that because we had our operation involved. So ultimately, I think the reason why the school boards had gone the way they had for decades was because there was only one side playing. It was like, if you align with the school union, you got money. If you didn't, you didn't. So 22 totally changed that. This one here, there wasn't as much resources brought to bear on the pro-student, pro-parent side of the ledger, and I think the school unions were able to outspend. Now, how does that work in a general? We'll see. I mean, I'm going to look at the races, and if we engage, then we will engage where we're going to do stuff financially, because ultimately that's what you have to do. You got to be willing to put those messaging out there so the voters have a good understanding. I mean, if like the Brevard seat, I mean, if the voters just have a good understanding, one candidate believes in the students before the school union, believes that parents' rights should be respected, and that you should not use schools to indoctrinate. You should focus on education. If every voter knows that, then that candidate's going to win. But making sure that the battle lines are drawn, that's really, I think, the name of the game. So we'll see what happens. But I think that there's, the interesting thing about Florida is we used to always be ground zero in the presidential election races. It was like, oh, how's Florida got to go? Now it's almost an afterthought, because we know that Florida, we have 1 million more registered Republicans now than Democrats. We never had more Republicans in the history of the state until very recently. So I think you're going to see. So you'll see. I think the presidential will just sort itself out in other states, and in Florida, some of these local races may may become. But I will tell you, in 22, by putting forth a lot of effort into it and educating voters, we had no statewide primary, really. You saw the turnout go up in areas that had those school board races in 22. That was not the case this time in 24, and I think it was just because of the information flow wasn't what it was in 22. But I think 22 showed, if you're able to, create an operation, if you're able to deliver the message and put the resources behind the message, that there are voters who will be motivated to come out for school board who usually, may not have done that in the past. And so in a presidential election, I think it's a little bit different because people are voting more for the top of the ticket and the school board's not going to drive. But in an August primary, you do have an ability to do that. And so I think we showed that in 22. Now, on the other day, Duval County. So Brevard now has a majority on the school board of members who respect the rights of parents, put the students first, and say no education or no indoctrination, instead focus on education. That's great. Sarasota, Lee County, Miami-Dade, who thought that? And now Jacksonville, Duval County, after Tuesday's election, they now have 4 of the 7 who are firmly on the side of putting students first, protecting parents' rights, and education, not indoctrination. That's a huge, huge change. They had for decades, had always had that. And, those candidates did well. And, like 2 of the 3 that I supported won, but I really had nothing to do. That was them working hard and delivering the message. We weren't in a position to put resources behind those races, unfortunately. And I think if we had on the one, probably it was only a couple hundred votes, probably could have made a difference. But they worked really hard, and the folks in those communities worked really hard. And now you have 1 million people, basically 1 million people in Jacksonville, Duval, and their school board has a majority on there. And there's no other state in the country. Brevard, heavily populated county. I mean, there's more, people in some of our counties in Florida than in other states. There's states in this country that don't have 1 million people. So Sarasota, Lee, Miami-Dade's the biggest county, and to be able to do a majority, that was something that I think nobody would have thought possible just 4 or 5 years ago. Yes, sir. So look, I think that Elon has a relationship in Texas. He obviously lives there. I think he's favorable to Florida. He knows we've got good launch conditions, but I think that's kind of the muscle memory that they have. I don't think it's a reflection on Florida. I think it's just the fact that they've done a lot of business there. But we would make an ideal place to have a headquarters for SpaceX. They do have a big footprint here already, but look, I like Texas writ large. If I had to pick where to be in Texas, I would not be in Austin. It's like a lot of the people that have moved from San Francisco, have tried to create, so they've had that. Whereas I think here, I think this is a great spot. This would be a great spot to have a headquarters here on the Space Coast, and we are doing a lot of things right. So I'm not promising anything or optimistic about it, because I just think that they've done a lot in Texas over the years. And remember, 4 or 5 years ago, people were saying Texas is the kind of the refuge to go to, right? Florida was viewed as maybe turning blue, that it was a very closely divided state politically. And so I think a lot of those states' decisions were made there. I also think they're incorporated in Texas with some of the changes that have been made in Texas law. But now, if you look, if you are somebody that is concerned about how the political climate could affect business, and unfortunately, we live in an era where that matters. It really shouldn't matter, right? If you have a good business, whether a Republican or Democrat gets in, it really shouldn't be like that. But now, we're just in a situation where if you're in a certain metropolitan area, if you get a mayor who's soft on crime and embracing like the BLM stuff that happened, you elect prosecutors who don't want to prosecute people and put them back out, things can collapse very, very quickly. So people can look, and they can look in Florida and say, you know what, that's a great place to be. You're going to be safe. You're going to be able to do your job. They're going to uphold law and order, keep the streets safe. They're not going to tax you to smithereens. Their debt is low. They don't have all the massive unfunded liabilities. So from a present, it's attractive. But from a medium or long term, I think it's really, really attractive. And so whether that means SpaceX headquartered, I don't know. But I do know that we've continued to see companies that have come in various sizes. And the interesting thing is governors used to travel across the country meeting with these businesses. Got to the point in Florida after a year and a half, maybe they would just call us and say, hey, we're coming. I just want to let the governor know we're coming. And so like a lot of what I've done is kind of field that, thank them for coming and thank them for the investment. So we have opportunities, but I don't necessarily think that now. I would love to see car manufacturing in Florida. We've talked to some companies about it. It's just never been anything that's been done here. But I think there would be opportunities for that, which would be really, really exciting. And then, of course, anything with aerospace is good. But regardless of where the corporate headquarters is, you are going to see more and more manufacturing expand here in the Space Coast around what's going on. And I had one of the CEOs from one of the major companies just say, look, we do not want to be hauling this stuff all over God's creation. We want to just make it and then bring it right to launch. And part of that is we have a good business environment and all that, but we've worked really hard on workforce development. You have programs in high school in Brevard County where people work on aircraft, where they work on these different things that have the skills where they can be hired into these companies. And maybe they have to go through an apprenticeship, but they go and do that. So we wanted to empower schools to be able to do that. We've put a lot of resources in from the state level, but look at how this area is developing. Look at what some of the needs are. And yes, there's going to be a need to have people that have college degrees or more in engineering, of course. Like, there's no substitute for that. But there's a lot of jobs that don't require that, but they do require some significant skills that can be acquired through some of these apprenticeship programs, high school programs, our state colleges. So focusing on that, yes, it's good for the students to have skills, and then they can make, and the people that get hired, they make good money right off the bat. That's really important. But from the larger economic picture, if we're creating that pipeline, these companies will expand here, and more will come here because they know they've got the talent that they can tap into at any given time. Thanks, everybody. It was wonderful being here. God bless.